Hey friends, it's been a while. I've been gone, I've been recovering, and I'm back, baby. I've been noticing a lot of awesome comments of people wanting to be lock, shock, and barrel for Halloween this year, and I think that's so fucking cool and so exciting, and you're using my tutorials to make a mask, but there's a couple of questions that just keep coming up that I wanted to help you guys with. I'm recreating each mask, but I'm doing it on a flat sculpt and not using a face cast like I did in the first videos to create these ones. There are some tips and tricks with using rigid wrap that I'd like to go over just to make sure you guys are as safe as possible when using this material. This material, if you don't know, is plaster. When you use plaster bandages, you heat them up with really warm water, like hot bath temperature water. And when you do that, there's gonna be leftover material left in the bowl when you're done. It's very important that you do not pour that down the sink, because once the water is gone from that plaster and it hardens in your sink, it could clog the pipes, so don't do it. You want to dispose of this outside, somewhere where there's not going to be a lot of animal traffic, or, you know, pour it into a reusable plastic bag, tie it up, throw it away. The reason for that is because, you know, you don't want animals to get into it, but you also don't want to clog any pipes. Don't put it down the toilet, don't put it down the sink, doesn't matter. Just don't do it. That's not how you're supposed to dispose of this material. That's really important. For the rigid wrap as well, you want to make sure that you keep the warm water, and if you're making all 3 masks, I changed the water probably 6 times. So keep that water temperature really warm, and if the rigid wrap itself, when you put it into the water, you still feel hard spots on the wrap that you're holding, that means your water isn't hot enough. So you may need to go heating up that water, or that bandage could just be not good. Toss it. Other tips and tricks of the trade are using non-hardening clay. The reason you want to use non-hardening clay, for me at least, is that I like being able to reuse the clay, for one. For two, it makes it easier to pull the rigid wrap off of the sculpt when you're completely done, because you can just kind of rip it. If you use hardening clay, it could cause you to have to use a knife to get the mask off, and then you could rip the mask. So for me personally, I personally think it's just way easier to use a non-hardening clay. And I use Sargent Art's Plastilina non-drying, non-hardening clay, modeling clay. You can get it on Amazon. It's 16 bucks for 4 pounds, 5 pounds, and you know, that'll last you a while. I think I used 1 pound per mask at least, so not bad at all. And then, like I said, you can reuse it, so it's really not that bad. You don't need fancy parchment paper, but I found that using parchment paper as a base when you're sculpting is going to be really helpful, so that you can move that sculpt around. So if you know, sculpt out the entire thing, but you don't have time to do the rigid wrap part of it right now, you can pick it up, put it somewhere, save it for later. So it's really important to have that base. It also helps with a little bit of the mess, because rigid wrap is very messy. You want to make sure you're wearing old clothing, put down towels, everything, because it is so fucking messy. Just the powder alone, when it's dry, can be really messy. So keep that in mind. And if you want to see me create the lock, shock, and barrel masks one more time using a flat sculpting method, then keep watching. Basically, you start the same way for every single mask. Draw out the basic shape onto parchment paper, where the eyes are, where the nose is, and then you're gonna smooth out the clay into long strips and start creating the border. Then move on to the eyes, then create a triangle for the nose. Anywhere that doesn't have clay, you'll fill in after. This is more of a visual style to see how to actually sculpt it. There's not many tips that I can give you other than don't worry about making it smooth and perfect until you're completely done with adding all the clay in. Rigid wrap, you want to make sure that you're cutting it into long strips and keep your scissors nearby because there may be times where you want to use half of that strip. Often for most of the masks, I cut these strips in half, and for you, it will probably only take one package of rigid wrap per mask. Using warm water like you would in a very hot bath, but enough to be able to touch, you're gonna dip the rigid wrap strips in until they're fully saturated, wringing them out as you go along. It is also helpful to have like a towel next to you to wipe your hands off so that you don't oversaturate the clay and everything below it, because then it doesn't dry as quickly. So take your time, one strip at a time, starting with the outermost edge and working your way in, laying down the strips and smoothing them out as you go along, making sure all the little holes are pretty much filled in with using your finger with the water, like a light bit of water on there. Make sure you wring out the rigid wrap pretty pretty darn good before you place it down, because again, you don't want it to be soaking. After you're satisfied with about 3 to 4 layers of the rigid wrap on the entirety of the mask, please wait a full 24 hours to ensure that the piece has enough time to dry all the way through before moving on. After the 24-hour period, you'll be able to do 3 coats of Mod Podge. Matte is what I used, but you can use glossy if you want. You're going to do 3 coats over a few hours. So 1 coat, wait an hour, 1 coat, wait an hour, 1 coat, wait an hour. After all 3 of those bad boys are nice and dry, you can peel off the clay. Work one edge up and roll it on over. It should come off pretty easily because this is non-hardening clay. Just rip it off like a Band-Aid. All you have to do after removing the clay at this point is cut around the edges if the Mod Podge like mine is coming off of the edges. Use a pair of scissors, be careful. And then on the backs of each mask, you're gonna do another 3 coats of the Mod Podge. So 1 coat, wait an hour, 1 coat, wait an hour, 1 coat, wait an hour. After all of that's completed, then you can get decorating, son. I'm gonna wait until my next video to get into all the decorating because I have some costume suggestions as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay fucking spooky.